everybody, it's Mel. Thank you so much for joining me today for my September wrap up and also my Diversify Me game and some stats. So yes, I am combining two videos today. I didn't read a lot in September, so it just seemed like the sensible choice to make. So we're going to talk about the books that I read in September, talk through some stats, and I'm going to do my Diversify Me game, which is the game that I play at the end of every single month to see how diverse my reading has been. So let's start with the stats this time. So I only read 4 books in the month of September, which equated to 1,244 pages. Of those books, 1 had LGBTQIA+ rep, 1 was written by a BIPOC, or actually in this case 2 BIPOC authors, 1 was a graphic novel, 3 were novels, and the genre breakdown, we had 2 fantasy, 1 horror, 1 contemporary. In terms of age ranges, we had 2 young adult and 2 adult. For my star breakdown, I had no 1 stars, no 2 stars, 1 3 star, 1 3.5 star, no 4 stars, 1 4.5 star, and 1 5 star. My average rating in core pile was 7.285, and my average rating for stars was 4 stars. So I think I did pretty well overall in the month in terms of quality. However, yeah, I only read 4 things. So September was a very, very busy month for me professionally. I have said this a couple of times in previous videos, but I have been working part-time and casually for probably the last nearly 10 years now. And last term I ended up picking up a full-time contract teaching Prep 1. So teaching 5 and 6 year olds, which is tiring in and of itself, but then full-time, it's a lot. And it was a lot to get used to. I really, really enjoyed it. I had a really fantastic time. The kids were fantastic, but it did take a lot out of me, which meant that my reading suffered a little bit and my YouTube suffered a little bit. But only in the sense that I went from 2 videos a week down to 1, and I read 4 books rather than 6 or 7. So realistically, that's not too bad. But anyway, the point being, I've only read 4 books, hence why I were combining things. So moving into what I read and what I thought of them. You will have noticed that I did say horror in there. I am trying to branch out a little bit with my reading. As you know, I'm trying to diversify my reading. It's been something I've been trying to do for a few years now, and that includes genres and styles of books. This month I branched out and read something that classifies as horror. I didn't think I'd really read any horror before, but I was having a conversation with Erin from Shebas and Shelves on Sprints the other night, and I mentioned Mexican Gothic, and I said, oh, well, you know, that's not really horror, and she said, no, it is a horror. So now I'm questioning whether I've read horror before or not. I read thrillers quite frequently and mysteries, so I don't know where the line is between thriller and horror, but from my perspective, I hadn't really read much horror before, or nothing that really classifies as horror, I guess. So anyway, the point being, this month, or September, I read a horror book. I read The Final Girl Support Group by Grady, Hendrix, and I bring up thrillers because I actually feel like this was more of a thriller than a horror. I wasn't horrified by anything that I read. I wasn't creeped out by anything that I read. It is a slasher more than it is a straight up horror, and I think it is taking, my experience in horror has definitely been more screen than book. So when I think of horror, I think of shows or movies. So something like Scream, where it is sort of taking the subgenre of slasher film and making a parody of it. So yeah, so I was expecting this to be a little bit more horrifying, but it was actually more akin to something like Scream. It felt like it was poking fun at a slasher genre rather than being specifically a slasher genre. So for those of you that don't know, I feel like this was really, really popular on BookTube. Ooh, it would have been a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago. So a lot of people probably do know about the Final Girl Support Group. But for those people that don't, the Final Girl Support Group is about a woman whose name I have absolutely, completely forgotten. But Lynette, that's her. And Lynette is a final girl. So a final girl is, you know, the trope of all the people get killed. Think Halloween, think Texas Chainsaw Massacre. All the people in a place get killed and there's only one person that survives, that is a final girl. Usually it's a young woman and somehow or other she survives. Usually she has to kill the antagonist, kill the villain, and she does it in a way that's kind of like, how did she manage to do that? No one really knows, but she did it, and she's the last one alive, but all her friends are dead. So Lynette is a final girl, and she is part of a support group of final girls, other women who have had the same experience. Final girls are famous, so the idea of a slasher being a trope in a movie, in this book it's taken from real life, so it's taken from these real life stories. So all of their stories have been turned into the slasher movies that we know, and they're going to this support group because obviously the experiences they've had were pretty horrific, and then someone starts killing off the final girls, and Lynette is the only one that kind of realizes what's happening. So anyway, that's the synopsis of the book. But yeah, let's see what I gave it. I gave it 3 stars, which is 5.71 in Corpile. So it was very middle of the road for me, and I think one of the things that kind of let it down for me was the fact that I was expecting a horror. I was expecting to be at least creeped out, if not horrified, and I really wasn't, and it definitely felt much more like a thriller than it did anything horrifying. There were a few moments where we had some description of what Lynette had been through, which was pretty horrific, but I don't know, I just was expecting something different. I'm not really sure exactly what I was expecting, so it's difficult to say why I didn't give it those final few stars, bump it up more in Corpile. I can respect what Grady Hendrix was trying to do. I feel like he was trying to write his own version of Scream. He was trying to write his own version of a kind of parody of the slasher movie, which I think was really, really interesting, and I did enjoy that side of it. I feel like maybe if I had have known a bit more what I was getting into, I would have liked that more. I don't know if maybe this particular book was the right one to start with from a trying to get into horror perspective, because I feel like he has a bit more of a meta aim than some of these other writers in terms of what he's trying to do. And I think I would have probably appreciated it more if I'd potentially taken it from that perspective and not necessarily taken it from the point of view of trying to get into a genre, because I don't think it is truly a representation of the genre. Yeah, it's a bit more meta. So I think if you like horror, and if you like slashers in particular, if you like the kind of final girl trope, and if you like a movie like Scream, then I think that you would enjoy the Final Girl Support Group. I definitely think that it was clever. I thought what he was trying to do was very clever, but it just didn't quite hit right for me, but I do think that's probably more me than the book. But yeah, that was the Final Girl Support Group by Grady Hendrix. Moving on to the second book that I read in the month, which was A Day of Fallen Night by Samantha Shannon. So this is actually a book that I finished in the month of September, but I started it way back in April. I have been reading this since April, so what's that, 6 months, with my friend Alison. We've been buddy reading it, and it's a lot. It's very dense. There's a lot going on. It's extremely big. I mean, it's this huge, great chunky beast, 868 pages long, but you know, look at the actual size of the thing. It is huge, and like I said, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of moving parts. I was quite happy to take my time with it. I found myself being very immersed in it whenever I picked it up. I mean, it is dense high fantasy, so I often take a little while to get into a dense high fantasy, which means, I guess, that maybe it took a little while each time I picked it up, but that's okay because I probably read 100 or 150 pages each time I picked it up. But yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed this book. It is the prequel to The Priory of the Orange Tree, and it is set in the same world, and it is following some, I guess, of the ancestors of the characters from A Priory of the Orange Tree. Like I said, it is very detailed. It covers a lot of different characters. It covers a lot of different countries and parts of this world that Samantha Shannon has built. She does absolutely amazing world building. I just can only imagine that she has some giant whiteboard in her house with all of the different places mapped out and all of the different languages and all of the different characters and their family trees, because it is so obviously well thought out and well built, and she's really put in so much effort into creating this amazing world that really feels dense with history. It feels alive. It feels like an actual world that has existed for a long time, and we are just experiencing a part of the world and a section of the history. Yeah, you feel like she's really thought about what she's doing and she's really created this world. Very Tolkien-y in that way, although the actual world and the actual story is nothing like The Lord of the Rings, except for the fact that it's high fantasy. So this is a world where some parts of the world believe that dragons are either don't exist or are evil, and some parts of the world believe that dragons are gods. And there's magic, there's different versions of events from centuries ago and different ideas of what happened and why and how to stop it from happening again. I don't want to go into detail too much about the actual storyline, because apart from anything else, it is incredibly rich and detailed and just so much going on that it's hard to really say exactly what storyline. There's no one storyline. It's a bunch of different people experiencing something and figuring out what to do about it, basically. But it's just fantastic. It's beautifully written. I love the characters. There are some incredibly rich, really fleshed out, really well written characters. It feels, like I said, it just feels really real. It feels really based in an existing history, an existing mythology, an existing place. And I just thought it was absolutely fantastic. I absolutely loved it. Beautiful prose. I love her writing style. I love the way she describes things. Yeah, I just think Samantha Shannon has written some absolutely beautiful books with this and Priory of the Orange Tree, and I highly recommend them. If you enjoy fantasy, if you enjoy high epic fantasy, if you love dragons, these books are 100% books that you should pick up. I gave this one on Corpile 9.29, which equates to 5 stars. So absolutely loved it. Thought it was a magnificent book. The inside and the outside match in terms of their beauty. And yeah, I think Samantha Shannon is a master storyteller and a master world builder. So yeah, that's that one. Next up, we have Avatar: The Last Airbender, The Search. So this is actually, I think, possibly the third book in this graphic novel series. This follows the events of the TV show Avatar: The Last Airbender, which is a Nickelodeon cartoon, and it is just, following some of the characters and giving some more backstory to the characters. So in this one, we follow the gang, the Avatar gang, as they try to find Zuko's mother. So if you have seen Avatar: The Last Airbender, then I feel like I don't need to explain what all that means. If you have not seen Avatar: The Last Airbender, I recommend you go and watch it. It is fantastic. It is a Chinese-inspired world, and we have 4 different quadrants of the world where there are different types of magic that are based on elements. So we have the water tribe who do water bending, we have the earth tribe who do earth bending, we have the air tribe or the air nomads who do air bending, and we have the fire people who do fire bending. Not all the people in those different quadrants do the bending, but if you are from the water tribes, then you would, and you're a bender, then you would be a water bender, and so on. So the world is broken up into those different quadrants. We then also have the Avatar, and the Avatar is essentially a soul who is reborn into each generation as the Avatar, who is someone that is the bridge between our world or that world and the spirit world, and they are able to bend all 4 elements. And we come into this first series, the first season of the first series, we come in when the Avatar has been missing for 100 years and the Fire Nation has taken over the world, or trying to take over the world. They launched an attack on the rest of the tribes or the rest of the peoples, and they yeah, trying to take over the world. They have completely eradicated the air nomads, and yeah, running amok, total tyrants, etc. Two of our characters, so Katara and Sokka, they find the Avatar frozen in ice with his, there's no picture, oh there he is, with his sky bison Appa, and they find him as he's being unfrozen, and they basically go around the world trying to help Aang, who is a 12-year-old boy, as well as being the Avatar, is a 12-year-old boy. So he is an airbender, because he was born into the air nomads, but he hasn't learned any of his other abilities to bend any of the other elements. So he's traveling around with Sokka and Katara to try and find people that can teach him how to bend the other elements. Meanwhile, the son of the Fire Lord, Zuko, is traveling around looking for the Avatar, and he starts hunting Aang and Sokka and Katara. That's what happens in an Avatar in a nutshell. A lot more happens. There's a lot of stuff. It's a fantastic series. One of the best villain redemption arcs I've ever seen or read, which is Zuko's redemption arc. So this book, Zuko is part of the gang, of the Avatar gang, and he is now trying to find out what happened to his mother, and that's what the gang do. They go off and try and find Zuko's mother. I love the animation, or the pictures. I think that they're just beautiful, very, very true to the original TV show, and I just really enjoyed this. I love these characters. I think that they're fantastic characters, great world building. This was very much following on from the TV show, like I said. So if you haven't watched the TV show, I'm not sure how much you get out of it. It definitely has a lot of Easter eggs, a lot of going back to the original. But if you've seen the TV show, I would highly recommend this. I really, really enjoyed it. Took me probably about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours to read it. So it's a very, very quick read and just a lot of fun, and, you know, like I said, a beautiful art style, and yeah, great characters. Love these characters, love following the characters, loved finding out what happened with Zuko's mum. Core pile, I gave this one a 8.14, which is 4.5 stars. Alright, and the final book that I read in the month of September was series Moonlight by Jenn Bennett. So this is a contemporary story about a young girl called Birdie. When I say young girl, I mean she's actually a young woman, I guess. She's 18 or 19, and she has just started a job, or just got a job, as a night manager at a hotel in Seattle. She is approached by another member of the staff who says that there is a mystery going on in the hotel, and they're going to discover what it's about. So that's the kind of surface storyline, but it's not really about that. It's really about Birdie growing up a little bit, and figuring out a little bit about what she wants and who she might be. Birdie is, like I said, 18, 19, so she's just coming into adulthood, but she had a little bit of an unusual upbringing. When she was a young girl, when she was under 10 or 8 possibly, can't remember, her mother was pregnant with her when she was very young. She was a teenager, and she lived with her mother and her mother's best friend above a cafe, and her mother's best friend is very arty and very kind of out there, very quirky, and so Birdie's first sort of 8-10 years of her life were very different from her rest of her life, the other 10 years of her life, 8 to 10 years of her life, because her mother died when she was, like I said, I can't remember if it's 8 or 10, but somewhere around there, and she was then sent to live with her grandparents. Her grandparents, well, her grandmother in particular, is very, very strict. She was homeschooled throughout her teen years, very sheltered, wasn't really allowed to do anything, and so she has a very sheltered life, but also remembers some stuff that wasn't so sheltered when she had a very kind of quirky life. But her teen years have been very sheltered, and she's not experienced a lot of stuff. This is about an 18, 19-year-old, but it read really, really, really young. I think that is because Birdie, whose perspective we're in, so it's first person perspective, I think that's because Birdie is probably very sheltered and naive and quite young thinking. And I think that's why it read so young, even though it's about 18, 19-year-olds. But I still enjoyed it. It wasn't my favourite book I've ever read. I gave it a 6 in core pile, which is 3.5 stars. So just slightly higher than very much middle of the road for me. So yeah, those are all the books that I read in the month of September. Let's go on now and do my Diversify Me game. First of all, I will just give you a very brief rundown of the game if you do not know. This is the game that I play at the end of every month, like I said, and it is my way of checking how diverse I am being. I am trying to diversify my reading. I have 2 areas that are the most important that I think that I ought to diversify, and the rest are ways in which I just want to sort of branch out and diversify my reading for the sake of kind of, I guess, broadening my horizons and maybe learning something new and getting a bit more out of reading. But the 2 most important ones are the ones that are actually over here. So these are the unhappy columns. Each month I have to read a book written by a Black, Indigenous or person of colour author, and I have to read a book with LGBTQIA+ rep. If I don't, then I get a line under BIPOC and LGBTQIA+ for that month, and if I get any lines over here, then I have to take a magnet out of this area here. The way that I earn magnets is every time I fulfill one of the things in this row, I get a line. Once I have 3 lines, I give myself a magnet. The magnets are all the way down here. I'm earning magnets, and once I've filled up this space down the bottom here with magnets, then I get to pull out a little prize thingy that has a bunch of different potential prizes. So we have book haul, because obviously we do, we're a BookTube channel, but we also have replace a favourite book with a special edition, go on a fancy date with Rowan, different things like that. So yeah, that's the kind of main aim. So let's go through and see how I went in the month of September. Okay, so starting off with the Final Girl support group. For BIPOC, Grady Hendrix is not a BIPOC author, so I don't get a line there. LGBTQIA+. There is one character who is in a sapphic relationship. However, she's present, but it's not really about her. So I'm not going to give myself a line for that. Neurodiverse, no. Health. I mean, there is some discussion about mental health because we're dealing with these people who are in therapy because of the experiences they've had. But I don't think that's really the kind of main point. And I'm not sure how people who might be in therapy for various trauma would feel about it. So I'm not going to give a line there. Australian Aboriginal author, no, they are not. Wasn't translated. It's not a comic or graphic novel. No short story, I did not read it as an arc, and it is not non-European inspired. So I do not get any lines for the Final Girl support group. Moving on to A Day of Fallen Night. Samantha Shannon is not a BIPOC author, so I don't get a line there. However, there is quite a few LGBTQIA+ characters and quite a bit of LGBTQIA+ rep, so I get a line for that. I don't think anything is neurodiverse rep in there. Health, mental or physical, not really, no. She's not an Australian Aboriginal author. It wasn't translated. It's not a comic graphic novel. Definitely not a short story. It is very big and chunky. I didn't read it as an arc, and it is not, well, there are some things I think that are not entirely inspired by European culture, mythology, history, but Samantha Shannon is a British white woman, so I'm going to leave that just because I'm not quite sure of the rep and what people who are from Asian countries would feel about it. So we'll leave it there. Next up is Avatar: The Last Airbender, The Search. Now, the original television program was not created by any BIPOC creators. However, they did have Japanese and Chinese people working on the show. And the 2 people that wrote this book, I believe, are Chinese American. So that is BIPOC, so that's a line there. No LGBTQIA+ rep, non-neurodiverse rep. Not really mental or physical health rep, I wouldn't say. Definitely not Australian Aboriginal authors. Wasn't translated. Is a comic. So that's another line over there. Not a short story, not an arc, or didn't read it as an arc, and yes, non-European inspired. That's actually line number 3 for that one. That's exciting. That hasn't been doing very well this year. So I'll pop a magnet on there in a minute. But let's go through and do serious Moonlight first. Jenn Bennett is not a BIPOC author. There was no LGBTQIA+ rep. No neurodiverse rep. Mental or physical health. You could probably argue that, but I don't think it was the main point. And again, I'm not sure how it would be perceived by Own Voices reviewers, so I'll just leave that one. Jenn Bennett is not an Australian Aboriginal author. It was not translated. It is not a comic or graphic novel. It is not a short story. I didn't read it as an arc, and it is not non-European inspired. However, I do get a magnet for non-European inspired because I am now up to 3. So I'll pop that one there. Alright, so anyway, I'm going to reposition you. So yeah, that was my month of September. That was all the books I read, where they fell on my Diversify game, etc, etc. Let me know in the comments below if you've read any of the books that I read, what you thought of them. Comment anything about the game that you'd like to comment. If you'd like to leave me a comment but you don't know what, then leave me, I don't know. Let's go with a cat emoji because Pistachio is sitting just over there on the couch and watching me. All of my social media details are listed in the description below, so if you'd like to go and follow me on any of those other platforms, please feel free to do so. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, I would absolutely love it if you would subscribe to my channel and give this video a thumbs up. And yeah, like I said, thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time.